guest today, we've spoken before and I've interviewed her before on my podcast, but equally, she's lovely and I've missed her. She's not been around for a while and then she's reappeared and it's so nice to see you back, Nisanka. I'm going to introduce you. You support the parents who co-parent with narcissistic partners or ex-partners. And I think that is such a big thing because co-parenting at the best of times, especially, it is tricky, but co-parenting with an ex is even trickier, let alone if there are other things in the mix, and we know there often is. But introduce yourself, Nisanka. Let's hear more about what you do and how you help people.
Okay, oh, thank you very much. It's been wonderful to be here again, Wendy, and thank you for having me and thank you for the time. Yes, as you've introduced, I help parents who co-parent with narcissistic partners. So I kind of combine NLP, life coaching, holistic therapy like EFT, matrix reimprinting, and that's sort of my own lived experiences enduring narcissistic abuse and recovering from it, to offer support. And how do I support it? It all starts with actually figuring out what the clients need and where they are in the journey. And some people are becoming more and more aware, and they've got the knowledge, they've started putting the boundaries in place, they've started learning strategies that helps them in the journey, they've started tuning into the children's behavior. So there is, and then we'll start from there, and then we go back and we work with their past and their narratives, their beliefs, and we work with the grief. Narcissistic abuse and the grief that's related to it is very different to grief that we experience when somebody is dead, because you love someone and they're dead and gone. You still have good memories to take with you, still have good memories to light up the day and to treasure. Whereas the narcissistic abuse grief is, it's all about you yourself being chipped away one tiny bit at a time, and that's a hard grief to deal with and understand. So we work with that. We work with your aspirations, goals. We work with sort of building up vitality and raising your frequency, vibrational frequencies. It's a lot of energy things, which also means that if you're working with me one-on-one, and we have this session, which also means when you walk away, all you have to do is to have a bit of a rest and reflect and let the energy settle in your body, and the rest kind of simultaneously follow. And then of course you have to make certain decisions yourself and become aware, being present. There's a certain amount of work that people have to do, take some responsibility. But narcissistic abuse is traumatic. It's trauma. It affects the nervous system. So
Yeah,
that's why I've
agree.
incorporated energy work into it, because sometimes when you've endured trauma,
Yeah.
it's the nervous system that remembers it. It's not the
Oh,
logic,
yeah.
it's not the cognitive abilities, it's the nervous system. So it's very important that we send this nervous system the message that it's actually okay, it's safe now, just settle down. So that's just how, generally speaking, we do things. Generally speaking, it's a very, very
Yeah, there's a lot in there, and I agree. And I think, um, first of all, if you as an adult have been in a narcissistic relationship, and I know from our past conversations that even your family of origin, you grew up in that whole kind of atmosphere. So it's something you knew, it was familiar, but it's also very uncomfortable, and especially when you recognize it.
I'd say uncomfortable. I'd go as far as to say shocking. And the first thing that you notice is how shocking your life has been.
But did you
What,
notice it at the time? Because if it's your normal, if it's what you know, you don't recognize. You go, okay, that's how life is.
Yeah, I grew up believing abuse was love. I grew up in an environment.
Mm.
Um, I think when we talk about this abuse, people often just get very defensive up front, and then they don't listen to the others, the actual abuse that I'm actually talking about. Just
Mm.
because our parents provide a roof over our head, they send us to school, or they were there physically,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that children receive the love and the support that they got. And this is what I was missing. So I also had that pressure whenever I stood up, whenever I spoke up, whenever I said something is not right. So I also had that pressure of you're being ungrateful to your parents. Look how much your parents are doing, or look how much your
Uh,
mother is doing. In my case, it was look how much your mother is doing. So I lived in my mom's town. My dad was an outsider, and everybody was like, your dad is the problem, your dad is the problem. Of course, he had a problem, so did my mom, right?
yeah.
Together, two of them created more problems for us. Psychologically, I never felt safe. So that also meant I grew up feeling extremely hypervigilant, extremely closed as a person, and quite anxious, a bit great level of relationship anxiety. And then when you go into we go into picking up partners for yourself, you kind of look for your standards are very low. The
Well,
standards are,
yeah, you're going to pick the same kind of partner because it's familiar. But can I?
or actually, can I just correct something? We don't know we pick the same
No,
kind
no,
of
no.
partner.
I
Look for
get it, sir.
different external qualities to okay, I've had that physical violence. As long as I don't have physical violence, I'm okay. So
Yes.
you look for external qualities that's
Yeah.
different. But emotionally, the trauma bonded cycle that continues.
Yeah.
That
But
continues.
can I just stop for one moment because there was something very valuable you spoke about earlier when you said that yes, your parents were blaming you for it or blaming each other. But the one thing I think we need to kind of acknowledge, I feel we need to acknowledge, is that your parents weren't aware of what they were doing and it was generational. And
Yeah.
so when we have clients, and I get them where they go, my parents were okay, my parents did their best, they were calm. And I had a client recently who got extremely defensive, um, to what, he was protecting his parents, but it's not, his parents weren't to blame either. And I think this is, once we can get them, people to understand, it wasn't your parents' fault either, because they were just following the same patterns.
Yeah.
It's like the blueprints are there. And once we say, okay, our parents did the best they could with the tools they had. And it doesn't mean that it's right for us, but we can't lay the blame at their door totally. We can say we didn't get our needs met, but I think once we can say to clients, okay, yeah, we know you didn't get any, let's work at that. Let's
Yeah.
get at what you didn't get rather than, well, they were to blame, they were to blame. Yes, of course, their behavior wasn't helpful, but if they're not emotionally intelligent, how on earth could they help us?
Yeah. I agree. I would like to unpick what you said there because I think as trauma survivors, as a trauma survivor, one of the hardest battles or one of the hardest socially constructed message I was getting and I was battling was this whole thing you said about our parents did the best they could with the tools they had. And I constantly questioned that statement because I could see our parents did better with the other people as opposed to they did with us as the closest family. So they were they were so friendly, they were so caring, they were so caring for others, and
Yeah,
but they were unable to do that in very close
yeah,
relationships that was with their own children because they were
yeah,
so trapped in their own trauma, trapped in their own generational trauma. And this is why narcissistic abuse is very unique in its way of manifesting in certain behaviors and
mm,
certain patterns. And so to those who feel like okay, I feel obliged to protect my parents, I can't talk about it, I think the first first thing to do is to accept abuse for what it is,
Yeah.
whether it's from your parents, your partners, or even from your own older children. You've got to accept abuse for what it is, and that's the first step. Once you've
Yeah.
accepted the abuse for what it is, you work with what you want
Yeah.
and getting your life back. And in that journey, if you feel appropriate to then look at the other side of the coin, then do so. But also, as a social measure or religious measure, if you're made to feel obliged
Mm.
to forgive and forget, I'd say don't, because it's
I'm
got
with you on that. I'm not a great one. I don't advocate forgiving someone. I,
no.
I think there's a lot. I think there's coming to terms and finding a peace within ourselves so that we don't hold the grudges.
Hmm.
I will not forgive certain behaviors by my parents. I can't forgive them. And or even people who've wronged me. I can understand, I can appreciate, I can empathize, I can do that. But actually, if you
Yeah,
wronged me, why should I feel obliged to forgive?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And also, sorry, just
Go on.
another point where you
Go.
said that your parents were very, very nice to everybody else, but not their children. But I experienced the same. And it's strange how, oh, so you could actually forgive, you could actually be kinder to family, other friends. You can be kinder to those friends' children than you can be to me. And it
Yeah.
was, yeah, so I can identify with that one as
I
well.
know this is a really hard thing because now, I mean, my parents do or don't. I mean, they're still in my life. We talk, and we still have a banter and stuff like that. But deep feelings, I keep them to myself, and I don't really share.
Mm.
My choice to keep them in my life is a choice I made because I got very comfortable and confident in my own boundaries. So I don't let anybody trespass those boundaries.
Yeah,
Not not even them. That's why I chose to. But there are moments, and I feel like it could have been a different childhood. It could have been a different experience for me.
yeah,
Um, the thing is, like, we are in our societies, we're often really scared and religiously, culturally, socially conditioned to romanticize
mm,
the relationship between parents and children. We romanticize, we have poems about it, we have, as much as that actual connection is true and it's so profound and it's so deep, right? When it's not there, what you have is disappointment instead.
yeah,
you know and it's okay to accept that what you have had was disappointment and abuse. It's okay to accept, because you you didn't choose to come to this. Well, spiritually speaking, you did. You signed a contract, spiritually speaking, but at the same time you signed a contract to come and learn these lessons. On the other hand, they invited you, parents invited us to their world, to this
yeah,
world, and they have 100% responsibility to give you the nurture, love, and support. And this has nothing to do with whether you have money, whether you're educated, whether you have a socially, good status. It has nothing to do with it.
mm,
I spent 20 years in teaching before I got into this, and I've worked in Sri Lanka and I've worked with underprivileged families in a charity environment. And I have seen some parents, like, so nurturing, so amazing with their children. And I often wondered, oh, look at that, look at that. Wish it
yeah. What it could have been.
what it could have been. And
Yeah.
then,
And I think we haven't brought in, you've talked about culture and so on.
yeah.
We haven't actually brought into the conversation the fact that where you are from, because I think that adds another dimension for you.
It does. It does. So I'm Asian, as you can see.
Yeah,
Asian. I'm originally from Sri Lanka, so I was born and raised in Sri Lanka.
yeah,
I've had this really deep voice in me. Don't talk against your culture. Don't talk about your against your heritage. Don't talk against your against your parents. I am not talking against any of that. And this
No.
is not what I am doing. And I think I want people who listen to this conversation I'm having with you, these declarations are not coming from a place of rumination or grief or anger or resentment. It comes from a place of reflection and
Mm.
healing, and to say, actually, these are the points that did not go well. So my culture is highly patriarchal. Even now, it is.
Mm.
So I have a brother. He's often had different perceptions, different treatment,
Yeah.
and these behavioral patterns was so internalized that I don't think my parents are aware of any of that. Like, even now, my mom says, I never treated you differently, and
Uh,
I'm saying, no, you did. And
yeah.
she's saying, I never treated you differently. I'm saying, no, you did X, Y, Z. And I've actually given up that conversation because
Yeah.
in her head, she hasn't, because some of these patterns are so internalized.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed is that when I was healing, something in her changed as well, because when you actually do the healing work, as the scapegoat child, or as the black sheep of the family, which I believe I'm the one, because I was so determined not to pass it on to my child.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I've been so far successful doing that. But when I was healing, I could see a change in the way she behaved,
Yeah.
and with my own boundaries as well, and me being able to maintain the boundaries, I can see that, I wouldn't say the relationship is better, but I can see I have established something that I would like to maintain. And that, so I know that one day when they're gone, that I won't resent for not having done anything about it. So
Mm.
it's, and the point of that is that what you do with people who've abused you in your life is completely up to you, and don't let anybody dictate it to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just totally depend on the work that you do with yourself.
Yeah.
And just because you acknowledge that you have been abused by your culture, religion, environment, society, financially, medically, there's a lot of medical gaslighting, political gaslighting. These are all abuse. It takes you away from who you are as a person, and that's a crime, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Point
So let's now
Go
come
on.
into,
I can go on
we could
forever.
talk for ages, but I want to kind of move on, if I may, to
Yes, all right.
this, how this relates to working with those parents, because that's what they've experienced, but then they are co-parenting with somebody who has those traits. It can make, as I said at the beginning, it can make it very difficult, can't it? So what is it? You're right, we have to work on ourselves, our responses, our behaviors towards the other people. And I think you're so right, it's what we've experienced that we will carry into the relationship with that person.
Yeah.
So I think you've acknowledged a lot, so have I, what we've experienced as children and what formed us and how we then see the world.
I agree. So going back to the point of co-parenting, of course, so the narcissistic people are unempathetic, they are dysregulated, they have rage, they're very manipulative, they triangulate children. Everything is a conflict. So there's also post-separation abuse. So you might have gone your separate ways, but they won't leave you alone because they've got the children to control you still.
Yeah.
So the abuse tends to continue until the children grow up, and sometimes even after that. And I've spoken to people in inquiry calls and clients whose abuse just continue through their older children's behavior. Lack of empathy, you just cannot communicate with them. Everything you say will be used against you. They'll twist it, they'll project, they'll throw it back at you. They'll just make big stories about it. They will take that story away and then make a completely different story and spread it. So there's so many of these things going untangling. But how do you? Because it's a bit like being trapped in a tornado. You get hit from every angle. You're
Yeah.
isolated, gasping for air. you just don't have anything to hold on to, because whatever you hold on to takes you deeper into this tornado,
Mm.
right? It feels like that. So how do you find your feet in a situation like that? In a very brief sentence, I can say that is to find, come home to you, so you know you have that self-awareness and become extremely aware of your trigger points, right? Because narcissistic partners, they've been with you, they've raised children with you, they know you so well, they've been
Yeah.
studying you, they know your buttons, when to push them, how to push them, how far to push them, they know it all. So know your buttons as well.
Oh, definitely. And
Know your buttons.
absolutely, it is, because we react. It's like you've been stabbed.
Yeah.
Not just in the stomach, in the heart, isn't it? Those wounding comments are like and we want to react. We want to react rather than respond. And I think one of the things I think is a very powerful sentence, but it does take a while for it to filtrate. We don't get it right all the time, but it is, just because you've been invited to the drama party, it doesn't mean you have to accept the invitation.
No, you don't have to take that Hoover. You don't have to take that bait. Narcissistic people are so good at sending you projections like lengthy emails, lengthy text, and the word salad, like rambling on this, that, and the other. You were this 20 years ago. You were that. I did this to you,
Mm.
and this is how you do it to me. You don't know how to pay back to me. Radi, 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 radi. You're like spun in this word salad.
Uh,
Pause, take a breath, deep breath, put the phone away, put the computer away, whatever it is, put that letter away if that got sent to you in writing, and just take a walk, take a
yeah,
chill, have a shower, cold shower, whatever it is, have a cold drink, stand bare feet in the garden, even if it's like freezing cold for 30 seconds. Bring yourself back to the body rather than the mind, and our learned behavioral patterns. So bring yourself back to the body. And after that, it's always good to have a coach or a therapist, handy, that you can then maybe SOS call them and say, actually, I've got this. How can I respond? It's good to have that, but it's not always possible. So in that case, I've got a couple of tricks that I can give you. One is to filter out the facts. Get a highlighter if you can. you know, Print it out. I don't know how you do it. You do it, but highlight the facts. Respond to the facts.
yeah,
Right? Everything else is not important.
yeah,
You can see in 2 10 pages long email, you might have to just respond in one sentence, because that's how much they spend their energy on trying to bring you down and control you.
yeah,
So once you've learned to take yourself away, and I'm laughing because sometimes some of these emails and texts are hilarious when you learn to take yourself away from it, and then you take yourself away from it and you go, that's the fact. Brilliant. Done.
yeah.
Send. Because you can't go 100% no contact when you raise children. So no contact would
No,
be ideal, but when you have children and when there's court orders in place, you've still got to stay in contact, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So it's about you finding the best way possible. I can teach you, okay, grey rock them or stonewall them, whatever the technique I can teach you, but you're not gonna be able to put it into place unless you learn to manage these triggers. Because
yeah, that's right. And I think, as you said, you can react, but the thing is, when we're reacting, it's because our nervous system is dysregulated,
yeah,
and we cannot do anything until we calm our nervous system down, because we are not, our cognitive brain, that
no,
intelligent part brain, cannot connect. It can't. And so we're not going to make rational kind of responses, whether it is to a parent, a partner we're in a relationship with
yeah,
still, or what a previous one. So we have to find a way of calming our nervous system, and then we can think more clearly. You're right, and then respond. And if you're with a partner and you're having a heated discussion, you're right, walk away. Say, I think at the moment we're both feeling a little bit highly emotional. We're not going to get the best responses from each other. Let's just take time out, I think, because there are going to be parents who are in a relationship right
Yes.
now and doing, but yeah, you're right. It is walk away and then don't react. And we will feel hurt and upset and angry and all those emotions. But you're right, it is. Great tip. Just walk away from it.
Yeah.
And then I think the highlight pen is brilliant.
Yeah. With the narcissist, like say you're still living under the same roof, you've had this situation, didn't agree, they they raged at you. You can walk away, you can come back and you can try to establish a conversation and say to them, you've hurt my feelings. Okay, they might even say sorry so that they can move on from the conversation because it makes them feel very uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean that they've actually hurt you, so you're not going to be heard or listened to. So when you're living with the narcissist, you've got to find a completely different support system
Yeah.
where you can go and where you can go and actually regulate yourself and get the support that you need and be heard. Their apology is more of, oh, come on, let's get on with it. That's what's happening in their head. Apology is never an apology, because apology is never an apology if the behavior continues anyway. You probably noticed that narcissistic people, you recycle the issues in these relationships, same conversation over and over and over again. You don't move on. And when you are, that means you're likely that you're living with a narcissistic partner. So yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to learn about what narcissism is, and you've got to really question. I have tried to speak to these people, it's never worked. Okay,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
not going well? What's
And I
not
think you're
going
so right, because by managing our emotions, our responses, we need to keep in mind it's the child that is going to be, they're the focus. We want
Yeah,
the best for our child.
yeah,
And I think that is, if we can draw that back to our partners and say, look, is this the best outcome that we want for the child that we love? Is this really what we know? We're fighting here, we're arguing, and yet have we really put our child first? I think that is what sometimes gets forgotten in it all. I think by you working with those parents and supporting them, that's what you're helping them with,
yeah,
because the child so often gets lost in this. They get lost in the battles. I've seen it where the children of parents who've parted, they're used as weapons against each other, and that is wrong. So I think you're right. We have to focus on the adults, focus on helping them to help their child.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's just so much more we could talk about.
I know.
So much. You've come up with a brilliant tip about the highlight pen, walking away. Another tip that you can offer people before we end?
Okay, so I think I've shared a few tips. One is the highlight, one is the gray rocking, so you respond to just the facts. And so when it comes to children, and children, if they go between or you're still in the same relationship, the narcissistic parents tend to triangulate children quite a lot. So they will trash, like you said, Wendy, earlier, they will trash the other parent to the children, and they will sort of do a lot of counter parenting, that sort of very cheap tactics, really, so that they gain control. So to have a conversation with them now with the narcissist is pointless. Forget about it. You cannot, because they won't listen to you. It's just not, it's just how the narcissistic behavior pans out. So what you can do with children is to build that connection with them. So what you can do is you can offset that level of abuse that's coming from them if you become the solid parent. So
Yeah.
learn that how to connect with children so you can become the solid parent. Say, for example, there was an intense argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, trust me, I know how difficult it is, because you're in the thick of it, you're dysregulated yourself, you're hurt, probably physically abused as well, some cases, nasty cases. Still, right? The focus has to be drawing the child closer, walking away from them, take a walk, go somewhere else, make sure that child is okay, and to say to that child, you're safe with me, I love you, you're loved, how is it, are you scared, giving that repertoire of language, the emotional language, so that they can actually talk to you about what's going on with them. They're probably confused as well, because they don't want to be in a situation to pick either of the parents. The children love parents anyway, regardless. Okay, so it's about, you're not going to go into explaining, or your father hits me, don't worry, you're not going to go into that and protecting that abusive behavior. Abuse is abuse, and you just say it's unacceptable how he behaved.
Yeah.
But tell me how you're feeling. So you're really connecting with the child.
Yeah.
Abel Marty says it's not what's really happened to you that's traumatic. It's being alone in that, with that experience, and not having the compassionate environment to process that. So give that compassionate environment. If you can't, have somebody in handy, pick up the phone, get a coach, have an adult that can be supportive, have a friend, find ways. And I know certain cultures can be very difficult, like my Asian culture.
Yeah.
I can give all this, but there's so many enablers, who'll tell, oh, he's just having a bad day, or he's just got angry, he's always been like that, or she's always been like that. I know there are people like that. Cut them out of your life. And honestly, it's not for me to decide, but if I can give you an advice, just cut them out of your life, because they waste your energy.
Yeah. And it
So
is right.
be that solid point.
A safe place for the child, because the
Safe
child
place for the
is going to
child.
feel incredibly unsafe. So
Yeah.
great advice there. All right. What's one easy way that people can get in touch with you, Nisanka?
Awesome. So best way is my website and signing into my newsletter that comes out every Tuesday.
Okay.
So I tell stories, and I give a lot of these tips, and I share YouTube videos I've done. So it's www.coachingwithnisanka.com. So you can see on the screen here,
Yeah.
coachingwithnisanka.com. Just Google it.
I will put all of that in the show notes. So
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
anyone who's just listening on a podcast rather than watching us, then the details are in the show notes, because your name is very unique, very beautiful, but equally it doesn't trip off the tongue readily, does it? So I think okay. I thank you so much for today. I think you've
Thanks,
been
everyone.
just
Thank you.
brilliant, Nisanka. I love talking to you. You have such great energy, and it's been fabulous today. So thank you.
Thank you for everybody for listening, and thank you for having me, Wendy. Likewise, I love your energy too.